Episode number 300 today as we look back at the Nolan Arenado trade with Paul Holden of Locked On Rockies. But again, this is my 300th episode as host of Locked On Cardinals, so we'll look back a little bit there on today's episode. So stay tuned for some Nolan Arenado, Trevor Story, Rockies Cardinals crossover talk coming at you in just a moment on today's episode of Locked On Cardinals.
You are Locked On Cardinals, your daily St. Louis Cardinals podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Cardinals for Thursday, October the 28th. My name is Lucas Smith, host of the show at LJ Fastball on Twitter, and this is the 300th episode of me as the host of Locked On Cardinals. Thanks for tuning in each and every day, whether it's on the YouTube channel or on the favorite podcasting platform of your choice. 300 episodes has come and gone pretty quickly. Seems like just yesterday I was just getting started. Seems like just a couple hours ago I was just getting started on YouTube. But here we are, 300 episodes in. Not all 300 on YouTube. Obviously, just started that this middle of the season. But 300 episodes overall since the start. And again, that would have been since August 2020. August, I think 5th was when I was hired. Might have been the first show as well, to double check that. But 300 shows is for sure the count. Double check that a couple different times just to be sure. Thank you guys for making that possible, because without you, it would not be possible. Yeah, August 5th was my first show. Just double check that right now. So thank you guys for making that possible, making this possible. Because without you guys listening each and every day, I would not have just wouldn't have anything to. Wouldn't have anybody to talk to. So I appreciate you guys allowing me to talk to you each and every day about some Cardinal baseball. Today we have a crossover with Paul Holden of the Locked On Rockies podcast, talking some Nolan Arenado, some Trevor Story a little bit. We're going to cut it into two parts. So part one will be today. Part one will be released tomorrow. We'll also probably have some Locked On MLB Insider clips tomorrow to share, but also keeping it Cardinal focused with the Rockies Cardinals crossover. So I won't delay that too much longer into today's episode. But just again, as a disclaimer, all this stuff was recorded before Game 2 of the World Series. There's a little bit of that mentioned in the later segments. But we're going to go and get into the Trevor Story Cardinals-Rockies crossover on today's 300th episode of Locked On Cardinals. So thanks for tuning in each and every day. So without further ado, here is Paul Holden and myself talking some Trevor Story, Nolan Arenado, etc. on today's crossover edition of Locked On Cardinals.
Rock on, Rockies fans and Cardinals fans. If you're joining us today, a little off-season crossover fun. I kind of think it was the inevitable crossover, the one that folks had to have expected coming at the end of this season. We obviously know what happened in the offseason. That's going to probably be the big topic of the show. But let me introduce Lucas Smith here, of course, host of the Locked On Cardinals podcast. Lucas, thanks so much for hanging out.
Yeah, it'll be a good time, Paul. I'm sure it'll be maybe some tough memories for you to relive, but nevertheless, it'll be a good time talking about one of the greatest Rockies of all time and just getting to catch up again. It'll be a good time.
Yeah, potentially could have been the greatest Rocky of all time if he actually got to play that entire contract that he had. Yes, that, folks, if you are tired of hearing about it, I am not tired of talking about it. We are talking Nolan Arenado today. We're revisiting the trade. I want to ask Lucas kind of the classic what if. Would you go back and do it all over again if you had the opportunity? What did you think of having a year of Nolan Arenado on your team? And of course, the big news of no opt-out. He is staying in St. Louis for the long haul. We're also going to get into here later on a lot of times potentially with a certain shortstop from Colorado could end up in St. Louis. And boy, how much fun would that be for you, Lucas? Because it certainly would not be fun for this Rockies podcast host.
Yeah, I think that there's a good possibility of that. I think a lot of people wanted to see it happen at the trade deadline. I'm happy that it didn't, to be quite frank. But I think that, especially with the fact the Cardinals already have Nolan, it's a very real possibility. And the shortstop market is loaded, man. I mean, you got Baez, Correa, and Story, Seager are all free agents. It's loaded, so it'll be a heavy class. He's going to get paid.
He's going to get paid. The only interesting thing is if maybe people are a little worried about the down year this year, but the end of the year, he really was able to show. I am the thing I'm most worried about. And let's just start here. We'll get to the thing. Well, let's just start with Trevor Story. The thing I was worried about from Trevor this year was the arm strength and the elbow. He just wasn't throwing the ball like we know Trevor to be. What was so great about having Nolan and Trevor on the left side is not only are they both gold glove. Trevor Story's been robbed of gold gloves. He's deserving of at least one, I think, in his career and his time that he's been here. But both rocket arms from the left side of the infield that are accurate. And Trevor just he had that elbow injury. He's had it before, and it just nagged on him. So I'm just wondering, Lucas, from the outside, when you see a down year from Trevor Story, both on defense and offense, does that make you think he's going to get a lower deal, or maybe a little bit more hesitant for the Cardinals to go after him?
I think in general, you even just take out the Cardinal aspect, just in general, I think he's going to get the least amount of money of anybody I just mentioned. I think
Yeah.
the only person that might get less is Baez, but Baez is just so marketable and so flashy that he's going to get paid for that in and of itself. Whereas Trevor Story, and granted, Baez has played in Chicago and New York, two very marketable markets, right? And Trevor Story has played in Colorado, not necessarily the most marketable atmosphere to play in. So I think Baez is going to get that money just for he's Javier Baez. And I think Corey Seager and Carlos Correa are probably better than Trevor Story overall, as much as it might hate people to hear that Carlos Correa is good at baseball. But I do think that the down year doesn't concern me as much for a couple reasons. Number one, we saw Nolan Arenado have a down year in 2020 with a little bit of injury with the shoulder. He came back fine. We'll talk about Nolan in a little bit. And two, the motivation to win in Colorado had to have been at an all-time low this season. And again, these guys are professional athletes. You still got guys that are playing for their paycheck and things of that nature. But the competitive nature in Colorado, just from an outside perspective, you at the beginning of the season, at least you had the the two-headed monster that turned into the three, that went back down to the two-headed monster with the Dodgers, Padres, and Giants kerfuffle that was there at the 2021 season. And you had the Nolan deal. You had the GM that nobody seemed to like. So the owner, whoever it was, the motivation to win had to have been so low. So yes, was it a down year for Story on a lot of different assets or a lot of different facets? Yes, but I think he'll still get plenty of money.
And I think he's going to succeed next year. I think he's going to have a great year because I'm with you. The mental gymnastics he had to jump through all this year, loses Nolan in the offseason, and not only that, deals with the turmoil of this. There's no way that Nolan's the only one that was disgruntled with the way the front office was handling the small competitive window
Right.
of the Rockies. I mean, there's just no reason that the Rockies didn't do anything in 2019. There's no reason the Rockies went after these random players that really weren't building the team. And there's no reason for that. That's where I would, and I'll just dive into more of that in a little bit. So I think Trevor Story going into this year loses Nolan, who obviously they're close. The two of them, you saw it when they came back to Colorado, and of course you saw it at the All-Star game. Literally one of my favorite moments of the entire year that took some of the sting out. Nolan comes out at Coors Field, Trevor Story's in the Derby, and he's hyping him up. I mean, it's goosebumps right now. Would have been better if Nolan was still wearing the CR, but still, those guys are obviously very close. And then you're approaching the trade deadline where the Rockies are way out of it. The Dodgers and the Giants and the Padres, at the moment, the Padres were still relatively in the mix of things. And yeah, the Rockies are horrible on the road. They're, on the outside looking in, they have a little bit of you can kind of hold on to how great it was, how good they were at home. But then he goes to the trade deadline fully anticipating to being dealt, which most people were thinking it kind of makes sense why, but no, the Rockies hold on to him, tell him that he's not being traded, and he pulls himself. When you pull yourself out of the lineup, when you're, like you said, you're a professional athlete. This is your job. When you pull yourself out of the lineup, you know that something's not right. But I think what was nice for Trevor in that thing is he was like, all right, I don't have to deal with that hurdle. I can just have a nice. He had a nice solid end of the year where not perfect, but I think is going to give a lot of stuff that'll increase his value. And I don't know if I'm going to buy Seager being better than Trevor Story. I know I've seen a lot of Corey Seager, but Correa, I don't know if I got much of an argument there. But I think if Story can be put on the big stage, I think he's going to shine. And I guess, I think maybe the door is slightly open still for a return to Colorado, just because of that shortstop market. If everyone goes and he takes there and he just wants to take the qualifying offer to take the money, but I'm going to give that at like less than a 3%
Yeah,
chance.
I
It's
don't
just
see that
such,
happening.
yeah, it's the odds of it are very slim, but it's just a matter of, if some of these big teams shell out for some of the big names, does he want to go to Seattle and play third on a 1 and 2 year deal? Like, is he going to want to do something like that? I'm just not so sure. So, Lucas, what would a contract? What do you think a Cardinals deal for Trevor Story would look like?
How old is Trevor Story?
Let me double check, but I
Yeah, I think
believe
that'd be a
he's
big
in
thing.
the later. He's 28. He's
28,
28.
so he's still on the good side at 30 if you think of it that way. But here's the thing with the Cardinals. The Cardinals have so much money coming off the books. They've got Matt Carpenter and Carlos Martinez off the books. They've got Dexter Fowler off the books. They've got Andrew Miller coming off the books
Rockies
as well.
legend Dexter Fowler as well.
Yeah, I think he did a little bit more for the Cubs than he did the Rockies, but I could be wrong. But no, it's a fair point. So they're going to have money to spend. And you could go a couple different routes when you're looking at where the Cardinals are going to spend it. Shortstop, in terms of positional players, the shortstop position is the only positional position that I see the Cardinals spending any money on. The outfield is set. You're not going to spend any money there. Third base and first base are set. Catcher, they already spent money on. I guess you could theoretically say that, spending a contract extension for Yadier Molina as he heads into his retirement. And second base, you're going to roll with either Tommy Edman or Nolan Gorman, one of the two. One of the two spots. And if you go with Nolan Gorman, then you got to ask yourself, do you want Tommy Edman to play short? But the shortstop is going to be the one spot that they're going to shell out their money. You've also got to think about the fact that they're going to have to think about what they want to do with the rotation or the bullpen piece, because the rotation was not healthy. They need depth at that rotation, and they need more depth in the bullpen as well. They need some middle relievers, especially if they're going to have Alex Reyes project to be a starter at the start of the season, which they have said they're going to do. So if you think to yourself, okay, they can get some bullpen pieces for cheap and they can get a starter for cheap, they're going to shell out most of that money to Trevor Story. And I think that if I'm Trevor Story, I don't want to be the first shortstop to sign. I really don't. I don't think anybody wants to be the first shortstop to sign, right? And especially with the work stoppage that seems to be looming, you want to be a later. So I think that, depending on what the other deals get and what the market tends out to be, I'm not sure what Story is looking for. You also have to think of the fact that the Cardinals have Paul DeJong signed under contract for a handful more years, and that was an atrocious contract, or it's turned into one as he underperformed the last two seasons. So I'd rather have Trevor Story than Paul DeJong. I could see Trevor Story making a bit of a contract. I'm not going to say an actual number because, again, I don't know what the market's going to be.
Right.
But I do think that if Trevor Story wants to get guaranteed money, then I think St. Louis will be willing to give it to him.
And that's
Take a quick break here on Locked On Cardinals to tell you guys about Rock Auto. There is an ever-increasing number of makes and models for car parts. It's almost impossible for your local auto parts store to stock all the parts you need. So why endure often pointless or seemingly intimidating questioning while the person behind the counter searches their database to find the parts on their computer when you have RockAuto.com accessed at home or on the go? You can save time and money with RockAuto.com. Rock Auto is a family business serving auto parts customers online for over 20 years. Rock Auto prices are always reliably low for every single customer. And whether you need a brake part, tail lamp, motor oil, or even new carpet, go to RockAuto.com. Go and explore their easy-to-use website today to find the solution to your auto part needs. Be sure to go to rockauto.com right now and see all the parts available for your car or truck and write Locked On in their How to Do Hear About Us box so they know that we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. They're at rockauto.com.
And that's interesting too, because I got to ask on this follow up, looking for a starter potentially. John Gray declines the extension from the Rockies. He had all signs and everything from his side says it points to a return to the Rockies, but I think he at least wanted to see what free agency was like. Do you think that might be that starter, that a John Gray type pitcher? If Gray and Story would. Many have thought that was going to be the deal at the deadline with those two players. What if they end up in St. Louis in the offseason?
That's a great point. I think that John Gray is definitely the type of starter the Cardinals would like to have. The Cardinals are very right-handed heavy, so if you want to try and get another lefty in there, then that might not be the route, because you've got your four guarantees in my mind are going to be Jack Flaherty, Adam Wainwright, Miles Michaelis, and Dakota Hudson. So those are your 4 guaranteed starters, right? So if you want to throw in a lefty, obviously John Gray would not be your option. But the one that intrigued me more, and he might not be a free agent, is German Marquez. Is he a free agent or is he still on the
No,
team?
they got him a couple of deal a little bit ago, I think a year or two ago, something like
Okay.
a 5-year
Yeah, because
deal.
I know at the trade deadline, it was also kind of linked that maybe the Cardinals might go after Marquez and Story. But I think that, free agent wise, because John Gray you could probably get for a little cheaper, right? So you go a little bit of money in the rotation, then most of your money goes to your shortstop, or you put all the money in a starter and 2 or 3 bullpen pieces. I think John Gray is somebody that I've thought the Cardinals should have gone for in the past. In terms of a trade candidate, maybe when his stock was a little bit higher. So maybe the stock is a little bit lower now, and they're able to get him for a little cheaper. But absolutely, I think that there's a very good chance, Paul, that we're doing some crossovers in the offseason because the Cardinals are going to steal a couple more players away from the Rockies. At least there's a really good chance at Story, in my opinion. But other players are definitely on the table.
That's very interesting. I'm glad you're this because I wasn't sure. I kind of thought maybe the New Yorks or something, but I think some of those bigger names are going to attract those bigger markets just because I think they are going to sleep on Story because of the Colorado effect, the Coors Field effect. But I mean, he's such an energetic. I'm going to put it down here, right here. I'm going to say it: best bat flipper in the league. I'm going to put it with a dot, and I'm willing to defend that claim.
Defend it. Go ahead, defend it. Make a 30-second, 1-minute claim without any video evidence. So make the claim.
He got to learn from Carlos Gonzalez, who was the next closest, coolest swing from Ken Griffey Jr. And because of being able to be there, he has the perfect amount of pop when he launches the ball and just the perfect flip every time. And then it leads into a great trot. And he just it's not so much of a launching the bat, but it's the beautiful flips like after the ones where he flips, or it's the quick drop of the bat. Those are that's why I would say.
Yeah. Cargo is definitely, when I think of left-handed swings, that one jumps to the top of my list as, ooh, that's a pretty swing. Yes. Cargo had a nice stroke.
Man, when he connected with a baseball and just launched it just into the stratosphere, oh my God, it's so much fun. So many fun Rockies players that ended up on other teams. Well, I don't know what it is about the Cardinals. What is it? Is it something that the Cardinals just being in kind of not that far away? They see the Rockies a lot. I feel like the Cardinals and the Rockies seem to cross paths pretty frequently in terms of out of your division play. What is it about Rockies players ending up in St. Louis, either through trade, especially through the trade, honestly?
Yeah. Well, I mean, for a while, you got to look at it. The Cardinals were the team most west of the Mississippi before the MLB started expanding west. So, and especially with KMOX radio station there, everybody west of St. Louis got KMOX and started becoming Cardinal fans. So you got the fan base there. I've always thought the Cardinals traveled well to Colorado in terms of just fan bases. But you bring up a good point because Cardinals got Larry Walker in 2005, 2004, 2005. I think it was on that.
He needed one more year, man. Could have gotten that ring. Poor Larry. He's a Hall of Famer though, so that you take that.
It worked out for him. And the Cardinals got Matt Holliday. They traded with Oakland, I think, but Holliday, a former Rocky, going to St. Louis and signing a long-term extension. So you've got plenty of, and now you got Nolan, right? So you have a history here of not only guys being acquired from Colorado. That's not where the story ends. It's guys getting acquired from Colorado and continuing to hit because the Coors effect is something that is talked about a ton, and it's got merit to it. If it didn't have any merit, it wouldn't get talked about. But Larry Walker had some great moments in St. Louis, especially in that postseason. Matt Holliday had great moments galore in St. Louis and might end up being a bench coach here in the next couple of weeks. And Nolan Arenado has had an incredible amount of moments here in season one. And to be honest with you, and you might know more since you're a little older than I am, but I can't remember if the Rockies, who the Rockies got in the Larry Walker deal, who they got in that Holliday deal, and if they won either one of those trades, or if they just were giving up Walker, giving up Holliday. But at least after one season, they've lost an Nolan Arenado trade.
Yeah, I'm with you on that, and we'll probably get into that in a second. But to answer that, Larry, I can't remember. Larry was one of my favorite players, but I was too young, and I kind of I felt betrayed by Larry Walker. I thought it was like his fault that he got traded to St. Louis, thinking that he was, somehow his dealings. But the Matt Holliday deal ended with Carlos Gonzalez in Colorado. So, when you look at that one, it's kind of like, they're both legends, honestly. They're both Rockies legends. They're both power outfielders that had monstrous moments for the Rockies. And then, of course, I mean, I literally don't have enough to say about Nolan Arenado. I mean, because that one's the toughest. It's not only Rockies players, it's Rockies legends that go to St. Louis, and it's tough. Walker, end of the career type of stuff. You're not, it's a little bit easier. Look upon reflection there. Let me actually look up that Larry Walker trade. Let's
the holiday trade was with Oakland first, wasn't it? He got dealt to Oakland at the deadline, or no?
Yeah, I think so. Here.
He went to Oakland, but yeah, but I think that you bring up a good point that it's not just players, right? In all due respect, like it's not an Ian Desmond getting traded. It's
right.
not a John Gray getting traded. It's borderline Hall of Famers. Walker is one. I think Nolan's on that track, and Holiday was a darn good player in his own right, having above 200 plus career home runs. So the Cardinals must have something in their database that say, hey, this person can hit outside of Coors Field. Let's go grab him from Colorado and see what we can do with him. And from the Cardinals standpoint, they've won every one of those trades because all three of them have provided great moments. Larry Walker won a National League pennant with St. Louis. Holiday won a World Series with St. Louis. And I think Nolan is primed to win at least a pennant here in the near future with St. Louis as well. BetOnline.ag is back and better than ever as we take a quick break from Paul Holden and myself's conversation. BetOnline has a new web interface for the start of basketball season and more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline remains your number one spot for all basketball and football action this upcoming season. Head to the new and updated desktop or mobile website to sign up today. And if you sign up today and deposit, you get a 50% bonus for your signing up, a welcome bonus for the promo code Locked On, LOCKEDON. It gets you 50% more money on your first deposit for signing up today. So if you deposit $100, enter the promo code Locked On, you'll get $50 extra. From basketball, football, baseball, postseason, NHL, boxing, and UFC, right to your favorite Vegas casino games. Don't wait to take advantage of all the amazing offers for the 2021 season. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your favorite sports. BetOnline is where the game starts.
The Cardinals received Walker and cash considerations in exchange for minor league pitcher Jason Birch, and then two players named later, which were Luis Martinez and Chris Narveson, and I couldn't tell you anything about any of them.
So is that another deal where the Rockies paid St. Louis to take their star player?
It seems like it. It's. I don't know what.
Crazy? Isn't that weird?
It's Dick Momfort, man. He just he's got a boy in St. Louis that he just loves hooking. Him and the owner of the Cardinals just must be besties or something because it's deflating. That's truly what it is because it's just the contention window for the Rockies. This most recent one was just slammed shut because of terrible moves by the GM Jeff Bridich, and at the end of the day, that's where my kind of disappointment starts is with him is because he was so combative with the media. He was so combative with answering questions. It seemed like he was so combative with players. And then you literally shake the foundation to the core of the Rockies by trading away literally anybody that doesn't know anything about the Rockies that was in Colorado that had even an inkling knows who Nolan Arenado was. There's just not a chance.
Top three player in the history of the franchise.
Already. And then they go out and they're competing back-to-back playoffs. Nolan's under contract for 8 years. You're going to use that because that Trevor's not going to leave if Nolan's there. This rotation's starting to click. But then the GM and his ego gets in the way because he doesn't like the way Nolan Arenado's talking, and he doesn't like that a competitive, one of a fierce competitor that is a fierce competitor who has always been a high energy competitive guy is mad that you didn't do anything to address the failing 2019 season. And then to go into the 2020 season and do, obviously there's a million of other factors, but for the Rockies to hide behind this veil of mid-market and they don't have the money to go after free agents is honestly a bunch of hooey to me. They're a top 10 team in attendance every year. And they might not all, those people might not be buying tickets to see the Rockies because, man, this year, the Rockies played more away games than I think anybody. When LA was in town, there was way more Dodger blue.
Oh, I see what you're saying. I was like, no, they played 82 away games. No,
they still played well, but I know what you mean. It's embarrassing to hear, let's go Dodgers, let's go Giants, let's go Padres, loud and clear on home broadcasts. And you got your batters up in the bottom of the ninth trying to come back, and they're not cheering for him to hit the walk-off. They're cheering for the pitcher. And that's the stuff that burns the most going forward right now. And leading into our next topic here, let's just dive into the Nolan stuff. The sting that's left from Nolan, and because I've come to terms, the season's over. He did the homecoming. It's over. The deal's done. He's not coming back. The opt-out, there's the one sliver of hope that you wanted to hold on to at this point as a Rockies fan for a Nolan reunion is gone. And you're just left with a team that performed better, but still didn't do anything, wasn't competitive in the long run. And at the end of the day, as good as Austin Gomber, as great as Austin Gomber was this year, if I go back in time, I'd nix that trade 10 times out of 10. I think the Rockies could have found an on par Austin Gomber, maybe someone that's a little under Austin Gomber's talent. Maybe you don't get the level that Austin Gomber, because when Gomber was good, he was great this year.
I love Gomber. I mean,
he is a solid arm, and there's development stuff to come from these younger guys, but there's nothing from this year, and even Gomber at the highest, that would make me not go back. If I had a time machine, go back and be able to stop that trade. I just don't think there's any. Maybe down the line, maybe I still need a couple years, but year one, I would take Nolan back 10 times out of 10.
I don't think you're going to find any Rockies fan that wouldn't do the same. For the Cardinals' perspective, you wouldn't find a single Cardinal fan that says, "Nah, we're good with Nolan," or "We're good without Nolan." I want Gomber instead, and I want Matt Carpenter to start at third base. Like, all due respect to Matt Carpenter, his career trajectory went straight down in the last 3 seasons. But that's a different discussion. But speaking of like guys continuing to hit after Coors Field, Nolan Arenado had 34 home runs this season. You know how many of them came in Coors Field?
0. Or wait, no. Yeah, I don't think he hit anyone.
0. Talk about dispelling the Coors effect. Nolan can hit outside of Coors Field, period. Were his numbers down a little bit? He had a 255 average and an 806 OPS. Very respectable. But he became the first Cardinal 100 RBI man since your friend, Matt Holliday. So he still hits. He still drives in runs, and he had a very solid season. And when I look back at this Nolan Arenado season, do I wish the average was a little bit higher? Do I wish he was a little bit more consistent? Yes. But this is a third baseman that hit 34 home runs and drove in 105 runners. I'm not complaining. But the thing of it is that Nolan has set such a high standard for himself. It's okay, that was good, but it's not Nolan Arenado good. Even though it was better than a third baseman than the Cardinals have seen really since Scott Rowland. Yes, David Freese had a fine Cardinal tenure, including a very exciting postseason 10 years ago today and yesterday. Had some pretty big moments for the St. Louis Cardinals, but nevertheless, you see, he put up numbers that the Cardinals have not seen at third base since Scott Rowland, and put up some defensive gems. I mean, you talk about even if the offense does take a tick down, the defense is going to be there with Nolan Arenado, and it absolutely was. I think he's going to win his 9th straight Gold Glove to start his career.
I don't know if he wins the Gold Glove. Ryan McMahon is a tough.
It's going to be a Rocky. Of course, it's going to be a Rocky. Did you see some of the players Nolan Arenado made? He's got his own tarp catch with St. Louis now.
If you
forget
don't
about
think
the Colorado tarp catch in San Francisco, forget about that. He's got his St. Louis tarp catch now.
He's got a tarp catch everywhere, but the San Francisco tarp catch much more a little. I think he embellished the St. Louis one a little bit, but that's just me being. If I have to fully admit, I am very much the jealous ex. Looking at, I shouldn't have, but I'm looking at Nolan Arenado. I'm searching Nolan Arenado on Twitter. I'm looking at the Cardinals thing because I got to know what he's doing. But you're absolutely right. That's the thing with Nolan with the defense. Yeah, I'm looking at his numbers, and that average is down, but he hit more home runs than anyone on the Rockies roster this year. He hit, and I believe if I'm looking at it, if I remember correctly, he hit 6 more home runs than CJ Cron, the leader of the Rockies this year. Cron had a better batting average, but Nolan, more RBIs, more home runs, doing what he does. And then for every run that maybe he didn't get in terms of his offense, he saved on defense. I mean, Nolan makes plays that no one else makes in baseball. I said this during the competitive years, and maybe not so much in 2020. He was slept on, but Nolan Arenado has been a top 5 at most a top 3 player in baseball, I think, for the past few years. There were years that I honestly thought the only 2 players better in baseball than him were in position players was Mike Trout and Mookie Betts. Those were literally the only 2 players I would say that if I could fantasy draft that I would take over Nolan, because Nolan is elite. He's elite on defense. And yeah, again, offense was down everywhere. And for Nolan to still bounce back and still do what he did on offense and contribute the way he did, he's great. But I think the one fair criticism to have and of Nolan is the postseason. And I think a lot of that does go into the fact that he's played mostly wild card games, but Nolan hasn't always shown up in the big games. And I'm just curious what your thoughts. It's just a wild card game. The Dodgers are good, but the momentum and everything was kind of with the Cardinals. I'm just curious what your thoughts are on that. There are some worrying trends for his postseason numbers.
Yes and no. I mean, like you said, it's mostly wild card games. So, and again, wild card is postseason play. Don't get me wrong. But I think the truth of the matter is that without Nolan Arenado, the Cardinals don't sniff the postseason the way they played. So it's hard for me to fault a guy like Nolan Arenado who helped the Cardinals immensely in the 2021 regular season, and also you're facing Max Scherzer and that Dodger bullpen. And I know that they simply ran out of gas. In 2021. I'm 100% of that mindset. I think that they were the best team in baseball this season. All respect in the world goes to the Giants, but the Dodgers are just that again. That's a different discussion. So I'm not really faulting Arenado for his performance in the wild card game. The Cardinals got 1 run in that game, and it was on a wild pitch in the first inning. And I think they were 0 for 11 with runners in scoring position. I'm not sure what Nolan was, but one thing I wanted to talk about with Nolan real quick, not to sidestep your question, I just think
no problem.
It wasn't his shortcomings in that wild card game that caused the Cardinals to lose. His alone, I should say. What the other thing you get with Nolan Arenado, and you touched on it a little bit, is the competitive nature, is the intangible it factor that Nolan Arenado brings. I mean, the emotion. My top Nolan Arenado moment came in the home opener, bottom of the 7th or bottom of the 8th. He gets a 2-run home run and gets a standing ovation on the home opener against Milwaukee. Cardinals win that game. Top moment of the season. Top Nolan Arenado moment of the season. And you have him who, like you said, hits 30 home runs, drives in 100 RBIs. Those are benchmarks for players, right? Those are the numbers you want to hit. And he is saying himself, this isn't just you and I criticizing the average and the other numbers being down. He is saying, yeah, I need to be better. You hit 30 home runs and drove in 100 RBIs. A lot of guys would be satisfied with that. A lot of guys would be 100% satisfied and not even like being lazy. 100% satisfied with the season Nolan Arenado had. Not Nolan. Nolan's not there yet. He wants to be better. He wants to do more for his team. And that's why at the trade deadline in August, he was asked, hey, what do you say about the struggles of your teammates? Or I forget the exact question, but it was something in that nature. And he responds with, I can't criticize anybody because I'm not playing the way I need to play. That's your leader mentality. That is a championship mindset that Nolan sets. It's the intangible factor that Nolan Arenado brings to this team that I think was the biggest difference. It wasn't his 34 home runs. It wasn't the defensive plays. It was the intangible leadership factor that he brings. And granted, this team had made the playoffs 2 years in a row. So it's not like this team was devoid of leaders. You had a Paul Goldschmidt. You have an Adam Wainwright. You have a Yadier Molina. But Nolan Arenado is just that different beast. He's just different. He's, just a different animal when it comes to leadership and it comes to the grittiness and comes to the ready-to-play mentality each and every day. That, to me, was the biggest difference Nolan Arenado made for the St. Louis Cardinals team. And again, no disrespect to Goldschmidt, Wainwright, and those guys. Those guys are all incredible leaders and incredible baseball players. But Nolan was just on a different level on those terms.